could die a happy man, I'm sure. When you said your last goodbye, I died a little bit inside, and I lay in tears in bed all night, alone without you by my side. But if you loved me, why'd you leave me? Take my body, take my body. All I want is, and all I need is, to find somebody, or find somebody like you. Like you. So you brought out the best of me, a part of me I've never seen. You took my soul and wiped it clean. Our love was made for movie screens. But if you loved me, why'd you leave me? Take my body, take my body. All I want is, and all I need is, to find somebody. I'll find somebody. But if you loved me, why'd you leave me? Take my body, take my body. All I want is, and all I need is, to find somebody. I'll find somebody like you. How long must I wait to be done in cruel surrender? I pay tribute to the work, but I stay in chains, stop heavy down. Isolate, no escape, time to think how long. Isolate, no escape, time to think how long. flit around in your thoughts, uncontrolled, considered anger, eyes twitching at the walls, but they lay silent on the ground. Oh, isolate, no escape, time to think how long. Isolate, no escape, time to think how long. Isolate, no escape, time to think how long. How long. I'm the boy and you're all the phone, lighting up inside your drawer at home, all alone, pushing 40 in the friend zone. We're talking then you walk away every day. You don't think twice about me. Maybe you're right to tell me but if you give me just one night, you're gonna see me in a new light. Yeah, if you give me just one night to meet you underneath the moonlight, I wanna take two, I wanna break through, I wanna know the real thing about you, so I can see you in a new light. Take a ride up to Malibu, I just wanna say, look at you, look at you. What would it matter if your friends knew? Who cares what other people say anyway? We can go far from here and make a new world together, babe. 'Cause if you give me just one night, you're gonna see me in a new light. Yeah, if you give me just one night to meet you underneath the moonlight, I wanna take two, I wanna break through, I wanna know the real thing about you, so I can see you in a new light. Yeah, if you give me just one night, you're gonna see me in a new light. Yeah, if you give me just one night to meet you underneath the moonlight. What do I do with all this? What do I do with all this love that's running through my veins for you? What do I do with all this? What do I do with all this love that's running through my veins for you? What do I do with all this? What do I do with all this love that's running through my veins for you? What do I do with all this? What do I do with all this love?
Hello and welcome to Hope 2021 Day 3. For those of you who have been here on previous nights, welcome back. And for any of you tuning in for the first time, we're thrilled that you've taken the time to join us. We really hope you have been enjoying the music and that you'll enjoy the rest of the evening with us as well. My name is Rebecca and I'm a second-year medical student at the University of Edinburgh.
And I'm Josh. I'm a third-year information systems student at Heriot-Watt University. As we begin, we just want to reassure you that this event is being recorded in accordance with current government advice. We hope you're staying safe and well, and if you haven't already, get out your popcorn, your chocolate digestives, whatever your snack of choice is, and sit back and enjoy the perks of being at home.
The event tonight is just one of many events being run by the Christian unions across Edinburgh as part of Hope 2021, a week that's all about investigating the big questions of life and Christianity. Please do have a look at our social media pages to find out more and catch up on some of the events that have already taken place. The links to these are in the description box below.
We've also linked a contact form, which we'd love you to fill in at the end of the event if you'd like to get in touch to find out more about what you've heard either at this event or any other events. After the live stream, there will also be a Zoom call taking place, which you can chat things through further or ask any questions you might have. Our speaker, Kenny, will be there along with some other members of the CU. We'd love to see you there.
Speaking of our speaker, Kenny Robertson is back with us again today, this time to look at the topic of hope in the midst of evil. Where can we find real freedom? Kenny has worked for a number of years with students across the country and is based in St Andrews. Kenny, it's been lovely to get to know you a little bit over the last few days. Let's hear a little bit more. So, what brought you to St Andrews?
Well, we've lived in St Andrews now for nearly 12 years, and we initially moved there to be involved in Christian ministry to undergraduate students, which my wife and I have been involved in for a long time. I grew up in the Scottish Highlands and I've lived all over the UK, so spent a number of years in Edinburgh as well as in London, and we also spent 5 years in Cornwall as well before coming up to St Andrews.
Thank you, yeah. And you mentioned on Monday that you were a student at Edinburgh. What do you miss most about living in this city?
I definitely miss sledging on Blackford Hill. Just seeing the snow over the past week has really reminded me of that. Lots of happy memories of near-death experiences on the sledge on the hill. I just really love that Edinburgh's got hills in the middle of the city. I remember as a young student being really grateful as a Highlander that I could escape the buzz of the streets and climb a hill and feel like I was in the middle of nowhere again. So that's definitely a privilege, one of the great things about Edinburgh.
I would agree, yes, definitely. And we've heard you speak twice now from the Gospel of Mark. Mm-hmm. We do encourage a lot of people to read it for themselves, but what do you enjoy most about reading it?
Yeah, I would definitely echo that. Do try and read through Mark's Gospel and see what you think about it. It's very brief. It's the shortest of the accounts of the life of Jesus. You can read it easily within an hour, the whole thing. But yeah, it's very accessible, but at the same time is deceptively deep and explores some really profound questions, like the one that we're going to be looking at this evening. But it's a book that I never get bored of reading because each time I revisit it, I discover something new about the person of Jesus that I didn't know before.
Thank you very much, Kenny. Just before Kenny speaks, we'll read again from this gospel. This time, the section will be shown on your screens so you can follow along. And there will also be a QR code there if you want to access the whole book for yourself. Mark chapter 5, verses 1 to 20. They went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. A large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs, allow us to go into them." He gave them permission, and the impure spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man, and told about the pigs as well. Then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. Jesus did not let him, but said, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." So the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed.
During lockdown, some of you may have been enjoying the BBC adaptation of His Dark Materials, the books by Philip Pullman. The series have been really popular in our house. And the most recent book in the series is called The Secret Commonwealth. And the Secret Commonwealth is a world of fairies and of spirits that some people don't believe in. And Lyra, the main character, who's on her way there to the Secret Commonwealth to find her demon, also her kind of pet Pine Marten / her own soul. On her way to find her demon, her guide gives her some advice about what she might expect there. Let me read to you about what he says. He says this: "There may be other things than demons there." "What things?" "Phantoms, ghosts of this kind or that, emissaries of the evil one." "Do you believe that?" "Of course. It would be an intellectual failure to do anything else." "There are philosophers who say that the failure would be to believe, not to disbelieve." "Then excuse me, Miss Silver, but they have separated their intelligences from their other faculties, and that is not an intelligent thing to do." The narrative that Rebecca has just read to us from the Gospel of Mark is the longest example in the Bible of an exorcism. And it's also one of the darkest episodes in Mark's Gospel. Now, why are we looking at this evening? Well, kind of like Philip Pullman's books, this episode gives us a window into another realm of reality, the reality of evil. And the reality of evil seems to be something, I think, that's returning to public consciousness. One of my friends said to me last week, it's like 2020 is a walking, talking illustration that evil is a real thing. There's a growing sense, I think, in the Western world that there is something out there beyond what we can see that we don't have categories for. It's like, as in the West, we are reawakening to something that the rest of the world is perfectly familiar with. So there will be many international students on your campuses in Edinburgh who are perfectly at home with the idea that there is such thing as good and evil. And it may be, I don't know what you think about this kind of thing. Maybe it's the first time you've really thought about this. And if that's the case, I'd really encourage you to look into this. I've put the link in the chat below or next to this video. You'll see some links to some articles that talk about the reality of evil and how can we know that it is real. And I just want to echo, I'd really encourage you to look into that. As Philip Pullman says in his book, it is intellectually insufficient not to consider that there might be that reality there. And I think especially with the state of the world as we see it, it's important to consider the reality of evil. Now, from this passage, I'd just like to highlight three things that we learn about evil from this narrative, and three things we learn about Jesus as well. Let me read to you the first two verses again of this passage. It says at the beginning of chapter 5, "They went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes, and when Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit or an evil spirit came from the tombs to meet him." Three things we learn about evil here? The first thing is that evil is out there. We live in a world that is increasingly polarized. And that means that what we have tended to do is take an us and them approach to right and wrong, or to good and evil. We think that they are the problem. The other side are the cause of all the problems in the world. But every once in a while, we discover that maybe the boundary lines aren't quite that clear cut. So, for example, you might watch something like the storming of the Capitol building in the US that happened a few weeks ago. And you might sit, depending on your political persuasion, you might sit and watch that thinking, these people are absolutely nuts. But then you go onto Facebook and discover that one of your friends agrees with them and thinks they're doing the right thing. It's a bit unsettling when that kind of thing happens. You see, because people can be perfectly normal people and yet be totally swept up in any sense of evil that might be around them. The poet W.H. Auden, during the Second World War, was living in New York at the time, and one day he went to a German-speaking cinema in New York to watch the news, which happened to be, at that time, a Nazi propaganda film. And he says he was utterly shocked when this Nazi propaganda film was being played in the cinema, that people around him from his community, German expats, immigrants who were living in New York, got up and started cheering what the Nazis were doing in Germany. These were people that he knew from his local community, and they were standing up and shouting at the cinema screen, "Death to the Jews, kill the Jews." And he was just astonished that people who have no vested interest in supporting Nazism, they weren't being coerced into supporting it, were totally swept up in what was going on there and supporting it. And one account of this story says that this actually made W.H. Auden doubt his own atheism, because he realized that evil was a real thing. But secondly, evil isn't just out there. Evil is in here too. A couple of chapters after this story in Mark's Gospel, Jesus says this. He says that it is from within, out of a person's heart, the evil thoughts come. See, he says there can be external causes of evil, but there are internal ones too. The author Alexander Solzhenitsyn actually agrees with Jesus on this point. Solzhenitsyn witnessed firsthand some utterly horrific atrocities during the Second World War by his fellow Russian soldiers, and also he saw further atrocities as a prisoner in the Russian Gulag in the years after the war. And he argued that there simply isn't an us and them dividing line when it comes to evil. We're all capable of it. He wrote this: "If only it were all so simple. If only there were evil people somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds, and it were necessary only to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being." We're all capable of evil. Well, how does that work? Well, it's alarmingly simple. Let me read to you some advice from later on in the Bible. It says this: "Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry, and do not give the devil a foothold." Now, that's quite helpful wisdom, isn't it? So if you have an argument with your flatmate, and then you don't resolve it before going to bed, you can wake up in the morning feeling really rotten about that. There's definitely an elephant in the room. But it's worse than that. See, we all know that anger can be bad sometimes. But actually this says there's an evil element to anger. And it says that if you allow anger to go unchecked in your life, just to allow it to fester and grow without checking it, then you open the door for evil forces to take an influence in your life. And then someday you might wake up and somebody does something to you that annoys you, and you have this disproportionate outburst of anger and a vitriol that you level at this person. And then afterwards you look back and you think, Where did that come from? See, evil is out there, but evil is also in here. We're all capable of it. And the third thing we learn from this passage about evil is that evil destroys people. Let me read to you the next few verses that describes the man who's possessed by the evil spirit. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. You know, if we allow evil to grow in our lives, then it can spread like a cancer and just destroy everything it touches. And in this man, we see an extreme case of what it looks like when someone is totally taken over by evil. He's a man who lives in the chaos of contradictions. His life is so contradictory. He was living among the dead, but yet also was like a dead person among the living. He was cast out from society, but yet was nearby enough to terrify them. Nobody was strong enough to bind him, but yet he was completely imprisoned. He was hollowed out from the inside, which made him destroy himself on the outside. And when he meets Jesus, he runs to fall at his feet, but yet he tells Jesus to stay away. It's a life of contradiction. And you know, the scary thing is, you don't have to be as far gone as this man was to be able to relate to him, even in the most minutest of ways. You know, we can be entirely free, living according to our own rules, but yet feel totally imprisoned by the consequences of our own bad choices. We can be utterly torn up on the inside, which in all sorts of ways can make us do things to ourselves on the outside. People might try and surround us to help us, but yet we push them away. And it might be that when we hear about Jesus, we might be drawn to him. Maybe we want him to embrace us and to accept us, but yet we still hold him at arm's length. See, evil is real. It is out there, and it is in here, and it destroys people. It's scary. But there is good news, even in the midst of evil. Because evil can be defeated, but it can only be defeated by Jesus. Let me tell you 3 things we learn about Jesus from this passage. First thing is that Jesus is utterly powerful. All Jesus has to say to the demons that are in this man is, "Come out," and they obey him. They have no choice but to obey him. And this is totally unparalleled. Do you know, there are lots in ancient literature from this time, there are loads of exorcisms recounted. And every time, the person who is doing the exorcism has to call on a higher power in order to do it. So they say something like, "In the name of the great high God, I command you to come out of this person." And it's, we might not do that on a daily basis, but it's kind of the same with us. If we're going to deal with evil in our life, that's not something we can do ourselves. We're not strong enough to deal with it. We need a higher power too. But see, Jesus, he just says a word to these evil spirits, and they come out immediately. He doesn't need to call on a higher power. He is the higher power. See, look how powerful he is. And this is exactly the same thing that he does with the storm that we looked at last night. And it makes no difference to him. It could be one demon, it could be a terrible storm, it could be thousands of demons like this man had. He just has to speak a word, and immediately it's dealt with. Jesus is utterly powerful. But then secondly, Jesus is totally compassionate. Now, if you've been tracking with this story, there's probably one question about it that I haven't yet addressed yet. And that's the obvious one. What is going on with the pigs? Why does Jesus allow these demons to enter a large herd of pigs and then drown them? What is going on there? Well, it's certainly a very strange thing, and there's nothing else like it in other literature either. But this would have been even more shocking for the people who were there than it is for us today. You see, we read this today, and we feel sorry for the pigs. We respond to it with sentiment. We think, what about those poor pigs? But back then, their concern wouldn't have been sentimental. Their concern would have been economic. So 2,000 pigs was an enormous asset economically in that kind of farming culture. So their question would be, why would Jesus allow this? What a waste. Why would he allow such an expensive disaster to happen? Well, whatever else is going on here, there's one thing that is really clear, and that is simply this, that this man is of far greater value to Jesus than 2,000 pigs. Jesus is clearly saying that no amount of human wealth is worth the loss of one human soul. He really cares about this man. And he really cares about you and about me. He really cares about you in your particular situation, whatever it is that you might be facing. He really cares about the destructive power of evil in your life. And he's willing to use all of his immense power to do something about it for your sake. Jesus is utterly powerful. Jesus is totally compassionate. And thirdly, Jesus can free us completely. It says after he sends the demons into the pigs, it says this, when the crowd came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. The crowd here are just like the disciples were after the storm that we looked at last night. The crowd are more scared after the event than they were of this man before it happened. But the man himself is a complete contrast. His sanity and his dignity is restored. He's set free from his prison. And then he is sent as a means of other people finding freedom too. Now, what's this got to do with you and with me? Well, we're thinking about hope all of this week. And this guy shows us, that in Jesus, there's hope even for the most messed up person. Some of you who are watching this will have been through horrific things in your life. Jesus knows about it. And he really cares for you. He knows the mistakes you've made. He knows about the darkness in your heart. He knows about the abuse you may have experienced. And he really cares about you. And he's done something for you that is even more powerful than what he did for this man. See, this man was so tormented by evil that he was living in the tombs naked, bleeding and crying out. And Jesus only speaks a word and he drives out the evil in his life. I wonder, what would it take for Jesus to do that, not just for this man, but to do it for everyone, for the whole world? And not just drive it out, but actually destroy all the evil in the world forever. What would it take for Jesus to do that for everybody? Well, it would require him to step into the experience of this man and the experience of all of us. And if you go on to read to the end of Mark's Gospel, you'll see Jesus, by the end of Mark's Gospel, in an even worse state than this man was on the cross. Jesus was naked and bleeding and crying out and was driven into the tomb. He willingly stepped into an experience that was worse than this man, to take on the evil of the world on himself. And he took it with him into the tomb and left it there, and then rose again from the dead. He has defeated evil once and for all. Do you know the cosmic battle between good and evil is not what we tend to think it is. We tend to think of a battle between good and evil as being between two equally matched foes, and we're not quite sure who's going to win. But that's not what it actually is like. Because actually it's more like D-Day has happened, that Jesus is the good, and he has defeated evil once and for all. It's already won. We're just living in the last days of the battle. And Jesus says to you and to me, he says, I know the evil that you face in your life, but you don't have to sit under its power. Let me take it from you. Let me drive it out. Why don't you accept me in your life instead of it and live in freedom with me instead? Will you know that freedom in your life this evening? Jesus offers it to you for free. Are you willing to take a journey with him in your life that is free from the power of evil? If that is something you would like, then I'm going to help you with that just now by saying a prayer that you can repeat on your own. You repeat it silently or out loud. Nobody's going to hear you unless it's your flatmates. But all we're going to say in this prayer is we're just going to recognize that you need him and that you're asking him for help. That's all you need to say. So let me just pray for you just now. Dear Jesus, thank you that though it is dark to look at, that you show us that evil is real, that it is out there, but it's also a problem that is deep in our hearts, and we're all capable of evil. And we're sorry for the evil that we have contributed to the world. But Jesus, thank you that you are also utterly powerful and totally full of compassion, and that you can heal me. And Jesus, I just want to acknowledge that I need your help. Please would you come into my life and drive the evil out. Please can you help me in my darkness right now. Amen. Now, if you're someone who has just prayed that prayer, I just want to say, well done, because it is not an easy thing to do. It's a really brave step to be able to acknowledge that you need help and that you're asking for it. And my prayer for you is that you deep down this evening will know in your heart the peace and the freedom that Jesus can bring by his Spirit. And I just really want to encourage you that if you have prayed that prayer, please tell somebody. Maybe you've been watching this with a flatmate. Maybe you have friends in your university's Christian Union who have invited you to this event. Why don't you tell them? Because we need each other to help one another on this, and they would be delighted to show you how they can help you. And if you happen to have just stumbled across this video without knowing anybody, it's really brilliant that you've found it, and I hope you find it helpful. And if you prayed that prayer, I really want to encourage you to join in with a Zoom chat immediately after this. I'll be there, others will be there. We'd be delighted to see what we can do to help. I'm going to hand back to Josh and to Rebecca now, who can tell you more about how to do that.
Thank you, Kenny, so much. We really appreciate that. As Kenny said, the conversation doesn't have to stop here. If you're watching with some friends, whether in your flat or via watch party, why not chat through some of the discussion questions that have been mentioned? If you have a friend in CU, I'm sure they'd love to chat with you about what we've heard.
Also, if you have any questions specifically for Kenny, or if you've prayed this prayer at the end, or perhaps you just want to think about this topic some more, we'll be hosting a Zoom call straight after this stream ends with Kenny and some of the other CU members. If you'd like to join this, all you have to do is message the Hope 2021 Facebook page, and we can send you the link for that.
Just a reminder about the contact form, which we mentioned earlier. If you'd like to chat a bit more with a CU member to discuss anything you've heard, it's also linked down below in the description.
Hope 2021 continues on tomorrow, and we're looking forward to having Kenny back with us again. Tomorrow evening, we'll be thinking about the topic, Hope for My Shameful Self. Can we ever be truly accepted? We really hope that you'll be able to join with us at 7:15 p.m.
Before that, though, our Instagram Live breakfast show kicks off at 9 a.m, followed by the next video in our Stories of Hope series, where we'll be hearing from another student about how Jesus has made a difference in their life.
If you're having a study break over lunch, or maybe you've just woken up and want something to watch, our international event will be taking place at 12 p.m. on Zoom, and our fourth question of hope will be streaming at 1 p.m. on most social media, answering a question about identity. Are you more than your resume? All of the information we've just mentioned can be found on our social media pages, which will be linked in the description below.
We're so happy that you're able to join with us today. We hope that you'll join us again afterwards on Zoom so that we can get to know you and chat about these things more. Remember to send the Hope 2021 Facebook page a message to access the link if you'd like to. Thanks so much again for tuning in, and have a great rest of your evening.